You know what's funny? I think that this movie just might be one of the best casted films of all time. What do y'all think? Hello, everybody. Welcome to J Movie Talk. This is episode 371, and I am kicking off Old School June. For any new listener or anything like that, Old School June is something that I do every year, try to do every year, where I go back and I pick movies from at least the 60s, some 70s, but mainly from the 60s, um, and everything, and just put a spotlight on certain films because one thing about it is that one thing I've noticed in recent years that a lot of so-called film fans, they don't go back and watch a lot of the films from this era. Hell, they even go back and watch films from even the further era, like the 40s and the 50s. Um, hell, the oldest film that I have reviewed on this podcast is actually the original Frankenstein, which was from 1931, and everything. And it's sometimes it's great to kind of go back and watch some of these films from this era, and everything, just to see like how certain films were made, and just think about like they didn't do this with any CGI. They didn't do it with, you know, it wasn't like hokiness to it, for the most part. And you just kind of sit and was like, well, dealing with what they had to work with in certain cases, they actually made some really dope stuff. And that's one reason why I want to kick off Old School June with talking about It's a Mad, Mad, Mad World. It's a movie I've been wanting to do for a while on the podcast ever since I watched the movie, and everything. But also, too, it gives opportunity for anyone who wants to go back and watch the film. It is streaming. You can just pretty much go wherever and find it. It's easy to find, and everything like that. And I felt like this would be the perfect movie to kick things off with. And yeah, let's before, well, how about this? Before we get into it, I do have a question I want to ask. What classic movie made you realize older film could still be entertaining? Um, for me, I probably would say movies like Psycho, the original Frankenstein, stuff like that. Um, there is a lot of really good stuff from a bygone era, when it comes to just filmmaking and watching films. And like I said, if you're someone who really enjoys film, if you call yourself a cinephile, then it's very good to go back and watch older classic movies. Me growing up, I always kind of watched, older films anyway. So it was easy for me to kind of, get into watching movies that were older than what was current at the time and everything. And I think that's one reason why even now I can still go back and I watch films from, you know, the 80s, the 70s, 60s, not so much the 50s really. And that might change. I have to kind of dig around and see like, what movies from the 50s do I really want to check out? Um, and stuff like that. But yeah, there's a lot of great stuff from bygone era. And I always say that if you don't know where you're going, you got to know at least where you come from. So I think, and it's kind of a problem too, where you have had people who are actually actors and actresses, and when they get asked questions about certain things when it comes to older movies, they go, "Huh? Oh, I've never watched this, or I never." But it's like, so why exactly are you in the filmmaking business if you don't know your own history? This is your craft. Why don't you know your own history as far as the craft that you're in? It's always very good. I should say, with anything that you do, you should know the history of the industry that you're in, at least, and everything. So that always puzzles me, and it's kind of sad that, I mean, a lot of the younger folk, and it's crazy. I'm at an age now where I can say, the younger folk, right? So it's just one of those things, right? But yeah, for you, what is a film from the an older film, I should say, that you realize like, yeah, this stuff is this era can have some entertaining stuff. So that's the first question I'm gonna pose to you. But let's get into talking about this movie in particular. So my history with it is um I had heard of the movie. And this is before the first time I actually watched it. I had heard of the movie and everything. I never bothered to watch it for whatever reason, I don't know. But I happened to be on I want to say I want to say on Prime. I think I was. This was a few years back. And it was already on and everything. But for some reason, I just put the remote down and just watched it from where it was. It still had a good little ways to go. And I sat there and I'm like, this is actually really good. So after the movie ended, I say, you know what, next time I'm going to watch it again from beginning to end. And watching it again from beginning to end, I'm like, yeah, no, this is a really fucking good movie. Um, and yeah, it's and I feel like it's one of the best movies ever created, really. Just for and I'll get more into that because I'm pretty sure anyone who's listening, like, what do you mean it's one of the greatest movies ever? Yeah, I do. I feel like it's one of the greatest movies that was ever created. Um, and my initial reaction is like I say, yeah, it's a great freaking movie. And after watching it again for this episode, I still think it's a very entertaining, very fun movie to watch. And I think if you have a few hours to spare, because it is pretty freaking long, um, to just kind of sit back and just watch and just enjoy it for the sheer entertainment factor that it has. Um, and what's kind of crazy about it is that it's a mad, mad, mad world. It still feel like this is something that could be made today to an extent. Um, but there would probably be a lot of freaking changes, and I think that's what would kind of dilute uh the greatness of it, in a way. And but it still feels very fresh. It doesn't feel like, oh, this is such an old movie. It doesn't feel like that because you have a bunch of people running around, trying to get to the money basically and everything. So, like I say, could this movie be remade? Which there have been essentially a rework of it. A little movie called Rat Race is very much reminiscent of It's a Mad, Mad, Mad World. But even with that, I don't think it is as fun and as entertaining as this movie is. But if there was to be a true, like, okay, balls to the wall, we're gonna do it just the same way they did It's a Mad, Mad, Mad World. Like I say, I don't know if they could do it to that extent. Rat Race, I think, is the closest that you could get to it. And even with that, to me, it has some issues and things of that nature. But um, I know some people, they can have fun with that movie. Me, I don't really have as much fun with that movie because I feel like they try too hard with that film. Whereas here, it doesn't feel like they're trying too hard, um, and everything. And one of the biggest things about this movie too is the fact that it's they're on location like for a good bit of this movie. Like you get to see like the landscape and just how vast everything looks like when they're on the highway and everything. You get to see like, no, they're out there, and like, so I think it makes everything just looks a lot better. And then when they get back to the city and how grand everything looks from that aspect, like I say, it's very fun to watch. um I will say this: the runtime is probably the biggest factor for anyone who can't keep their face out of the phone or whatever, because the movie is over 3 hours long. I think it's like 3 hours and 30 minutes or something like that. But if you're someone that's really into what's going on the screen, it kind of goes by really fast. Um, and like I say again, the cast is really freaking dope. Especially for the people that they assembled for this cast. It's kind of insane, really, when you think about it. And like I said, we're looking at like who were big, as in the comedy world or whatever at that time. Um, and for them to get these people together is, just something great. The fact that you, and then some people that wasn't even known for comedy like that. I mean, the fact that you got Spencer Tracy to be in here, along with Milton Berle, Sid Caesar, Buddy Hackett, Ethel Merman, Mickey Rooney, Dick Shawn, which that's an insane name, uh, Jonathan Winters, you know, and those are like just some of the main people. Then you got Jim Brackett, who's probably best known for being uh, from Gilligan's Island as a pilot who's a damn drunkard. And then you get these cameos throughout. I mean, Peter Falk shows up, Norman Fell shows up. Um, you get Buster Keaton for like 2 seconds, shows up. Don Knotts, he's here. Carl Reiner, another, and then probably I feel like probably the best cameo appearance in any movie really is the fact you got the Three Stooges. That just makes a random appearance as the firefighters, and I like how the camera just pans over and you kind of get their little musical ting as they stand there and everything. And if I'm correct on this, this is the only time on film that they were shown in color, which is insane. But not really, because this movie came out in 1963, so it's not that much of an insane. I mean, color had only been around for like, I think, since what, 50, well, maybe 55, maybe, I'm not sure, because back then they were still, even when color became a thing, they were still doing stuff in black and white, so it wasn't like color had just taken over. So yeah, I think this is the only time that the Three Stooges were ever seen on film or TV. Well, on film, that is, in color, because they pretty much was, I want to say, retired ish around this time, uh, and everything. But yeah, to me, that's like still one of the best, if not the best, cameo appearance in a movie. And everything. And like I said, the cast is stacked. I mean, all those big name people of that era were in this. And everything. And then the fact that, and I think this movie in a way kind of helped create the concept of, oh, everybody's in this movie, because like, when you look at movies like Friday, like if you know who a lot of those people are, like, I mean, of course you have Ice Cube, Chris Tucker, but then you have John Witherspoon, Tiny Lister, Bernie Mac, uh, Regina King, Faison Love, AJ Johnson, well, Anthony AJ Johnson, that is, uh, that's showing up here, and it's like, damn, everybody in this movie, you know, F. Gary Gray, the director, is in it, so it's like, damn, everybody's in this movie. Or like in Higher Learning, you have, again, you got Ice Cube, Omar Epps, Lawrence Fishburne, Tyra Banks, uh, Christy Swanson, Jennifer Connelly, Buster Rhymes, Cole Hauser, Michael Rappaport is another example. Damn, everybody's in this movie, type of thing. And I think this movie kind of helped create that whole thing of like, damn, everybody's in this movie, type of thing. And then the fact that, like, say, you have comedy legends like Milton Berle in this alongside Sid Caesar, and the fact that Sid Caesar, I think, was like in his early 40s here, and Milton was in his mid 50s, which is kind of funny because Ethel Merman and Milton Berle were the same age, but Milton Berle character is married to Ethel Merman's daughter, so he was her son-in-law. And I don't know if they, like, if he was supposed to be, like, if his character is supposed to be his actual age, but it's just funny that in real life they were the same age, but she's his mother-in-law, and everything. And they never play that, they never kind of play that factor up or anything. Um, but yeah, I mean, but like I say, you have these like legends together, and then like I say, you got Buddy Hackett and and Mickey Rooney running around or flying around together and just losing their freaking minds. Jonathan Winters doing some of the crazy stuff that he's doing in this, which I'm gonna talk about that fight scene with him, which is just like sheer insanity. But it's dope just kind of seeing all these people sharing the screen. And I'm pretty sure there was some egos. I'm pretty sure of that. Milton Berle was on the there was some egos, but they all work very well together when they were a group. And then as the movie progresses along, and when they all kind of go off on their little side quests and everything, everybody kind of gets their moments to shine. And I think that's what kind of adds to the runtime is the fact that okay, we got to give everybody their time to shine. So in a way, that's a good thing, but at the same time, I think that's another reason why the movie runtime gets ballooned up the way it does because it's like okay, we got to get Milton his time to shine. We got to get Sid Caesar his time to shine. We got to get Jonathan Winters his time to shine. Mickey Rooney and Buddy Hackett got to get their time to shine. And then all around, Spencer Tracy, he just like, yeah, I want to get to Mexico type of thing. But um, it, but also too watching this and thinking about if this movie was made today, like how many comedy legends do you think that they could get to be there? Imagine if you got like Dave Chappelle, Chris Rock, Eddie Murphy, uh, if he was still alive, Bernie Mac. Um, if you got those guys all in a movie together like this, I mean, Eddie was very able in two movies actually to get a lot of legends together. I mean, the first movie, because of course, was Harlem Nights, where he was able to get himself, Red Fox, Richard Pryor. You got Della Reese. You got Arsenio Hall, uh, and everything. You got all of them together. Robert Townsend was able to kind of do a similar thing with Harlem Shuffle. You know, himself, Keenan, but it wasn't legends at that time. But looking back on it, they are legends in Hollywood Shuffle. But Keenan with "I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker," he was able to get Bernie Casey, Pam, not Pam Grier, but Janet Dubois, um, Jim Brown, Isaac Hayes, um, freaking what's his name? I can't remember his name. He played Mr. Big. You're not gonna make a dummy out of me. Why can't I remember his freaking name? Because he played in. He's a legend also. Damn it, I can't remember the man's name. But anyway, you got all these people to be in that movie, and then so Eddie was able to do that with Coming to America. Well, not Coming to. Well, yeah, Coming to America also. I mean, hell, you got James Earl Jones and John Amos. Uh, and people like that to show up in this movie. Frankie Faison, right? Legends, in various forms to show up in Coming to America, but also in Harlem Nights. And then of course in the movie Life, it's him, Martin Lawrence, but you have Bernie Mac, Anthony Anderson. You have, even though it was a young Anthony Anderson, but looking back on it now, these are legends that show up in this movie. You have Rick James show up for like 2 seconds. You got Clarence Williams III showing up for 2 seconds, for the most part. There's a lot. They get a lot of legends in the films. But thinking about like now, like what legends could be in the film together now, and it's not like a ego trip, because I don't think in any of those cases like anybody had such big egos. It was always like, okay, we're to make it's a common goal. I can be in the scene for 2 minutes, or I can be in a chunk of the movie or whatever, and I'm cool with it or whatever. But now I don't think it would be as easy to get people that are considered legends, and then it's like, well, who are considered legends now outside the people I'm naming? Like, who else could they get to show up, to be in a movie, and it would have to make sense, and everything. I think it would be very hard to do something like that now, which is unfortunate. And uh I think now they wouldn't even try to get legends. It would be like, oh, well, who's an influencer, who's a streamer, and and stuff like this. And it's like, who the hell is that? They not this, they not that, type of thing. So I think it would be very hard now to kind of recreate just getting a lot of great talent in one place together like this. Hell, even the Expendables. I mean, you were able to get a lot of action legends together, you know. So yeah, but I think it's still very hard to do because there were still some people that were missing. But it's still something very hard to do as time goes on. Um, I mean, this movie is like it's a giant chase film, really, and it's all like it is a rat race, in essential, because everyone they have one goal, which is to pursue this money, because this man who at the very beginning is driving like a madman on the road, he crashes, and everyone, all the main cast, is there to witness and see him, and he tells them that if they get to this place where the big W is, they'll get a bunch of money, and then he dies, right? So that right there, everyone at first is like, okay, well, this is what we do, XYZ, blah, blah, blah. But of course, it doesn't go the way they want it. So then it's like, all right, well, since every way we figured it, nobody is happy with how we figured it. So basically, it's every man, including the old bag, which I always like that part, but it's for themselves. And that's when they all spew off on their own and trying to get to the money, and that's when a lot of calamity ensues. So the biggest thing that pretty much drives this movie is greed, or the ecstasy for gold. It's like in the good, the bad, the ugly, right? It's that ecstasy for the money, and I would do anything to get to this money. And in a lot of ways, the movie kind of almost feels like a live action cartoon because some of the stuff they do is very slapstick. And it's very fun to watch. And just watch it just for like, well, how do they do that exactly? Like when the man is driving the car and he ends up driving it into the to the river. He's still driving it. And it's like, how the hell did they do this? Like, how long did he before they say cut? Everything. Or when Jonathan Winter's character, when he gets to that gas station, and them two idiots, he's trying to talk to him, but then they start crashing out on him and they trying to fight him. And then he's like, all right, fine. This how y'all want to play? And then he goes, it's literally for like a good 5 to 10 minutes where he is literally beating the hell out of these dudes, throwing them around. It's almost like a damn wrestling match, like a street fight or something. And in the process of beating the hell out of them, they're tearing up the set the whole time. And by the time that fight is over, the whole place has come crashing down. And it's just like, this is like, how did they, I mean, you kind of get a sense of how they did it. And you know that for a lot of it, it's not actually Jonathan Winters. It's a stunt man because his back is turned to the camera for a lot of it. But a lot of it is him. And a lot of it is those guys getting ragged all around. Or when Sid Caesar's character and his wife are trapped in the store, and they get trapped down in the basement trying to get out, and then all the fireworks and everything is going off, and that becomes like a holy mess and everything, and how they end up getting out of there is just hilarious also. um but like I say, it's just, as the movie goes on, like, chaos ensues and it continues to build, uh and everything. And I think a lot of reasons too why you started to get like road movies that came after. I mean, like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles with, Steve Martin and John Candy running around, and everything. Midnight Run, Robert De Niro and Charles Grodin running around, and everything. So I think because of this movie, you can kind of say, okay, this movie borrows from It's a Mad, Mad, Mad World in ways. Um, Hell, even Dutch with Ed O'Neill. I mean, it borrows from this movie, especially out there with them damn fireworks, and they go off and he almost getting murdered by the fireworks. But I think road movies borrow a lot from this movie because I don't think before this movie before this movie, I don't believe there were a lot. There were like road movies or anything like that. But this is all. Even though it's a comedy, but it is a road movie because a lot of it takes place on the road and a lot of stuff happens on the road. And it's an adventure movie because everyone's trying to get to where the big W is to get to the money. Um, I'm trying to think of a modern ensemble comedy. Uh, it's I mean, because I don't. It's bad to say this, but I don't watch a lot of comedies like I used to. Um, I think they try too hard with a lot of comedies. I mean, there are some there are some good comedies out, but uh, for the most part, I can't really find myself watching a lot of great. I don't think there's a lot of really good comedies overall anymore. I think they try too hard, or they don't try enough to be what it possibly can be in a lot of cases. Oh, another movie with a great ensemble, Caddyshack. I mean, the fact that you have Chevy Chase, Rodney Dangerfield, Ted Knight, um, all in this, and with all these people at this golf resort and a lot of calamity, Bill Murray, right? And a lot of nonsense that they got going on there. That's another example of, a good ensemble where everyone kind of gets enough time to shine, in a sense, and everything. So going back to talking about like the stunts and practical effects stuff, which I mentioned a little bit before. So I feel like this is one of the strongest parts of the movie is the stunts and the practical effects stuff. Because again, we talking about the early 60s. There was no CGI. There was, you know, and so you have these people, either them or the stunt people, doing a lot of this stuff. Hell, the scene when Ethel Merman gets trapped in the damn pickup, not the pickup, but the tow truck, and it's going backwards down the hill. Clearly, that's not her in it, but it is a stunt person in it, and the truck is literally, flying backwards down the hill, and then it comes to a stop in the field, right? That's done. You can tell, like, no, that was somebody actually in this truck doing this, right? Or like I say, the scene I was talking about with Jonathan Winter's character when he beat up the two idiots at the gas station. Now a lot of what we get with Mickey Rooney and Buddy Hackett in the plane, clearly that is on like on a stage. I mean, you look in the background and they're not really going, they're not really flying or anything like that. But the tower controller, when the plane does come flying by, when he flips out the thing and the way they get the wires, tied around him, like on a big thing at the end where everyone is literally, it kind of makes me think about that scene from Home Alone 2 when Marv and Harry are climbing the rope and Kevin lights the rope on fire because he has it doused in kerosene. And these idiots like fall at least 100 feet. They should have died. I always say that, like, they should have died from that fall, but they don't. There's a scene that's in It's a Mad, Mad, Mad World where the entire cast is together and they're on this, because they're back in the city and they're on this building thing, and it literally flings all of them off or whatever. And it's like they should have died. They all should have died, but somehow they don't die. And it's always funny, like in movies, how you'll have people, like some movies will show that people are very durable, like they can literally flip and fall on their back, and it's like, oh, it's not a big deal. But then there's other movies where it's like, no, people are really like very fragile, and those movies are, I feel like, are more real to life because yes, your body is very fragile. You can't fall, from such a height and nothing is wrong with you. You just get up and like, oh, I'm good, you know. But in movies like this, these people, they fall, great lengths, and yeah, they all end up in the hospital for the most part. But for the most part, I'm okay. And it's very hard to, they're very indestructible, basically. Um, and the fact that this movie has a lot of destruction in it, it's just insane too because it's like everywhere that these people go, they literally destroy it and leave it worse than where they first found it, in a sense. Um, and then a lot of action that's in this movie is still very impressive. Like I say, one of my favorite parts of the movie is that fight scene, or the whole thing with Caesar and his wife. They're down in the basement, and like I say, trying to get out of there, and how they finally get out of there is just ridiculous, but it's still impressive to watch. Um, and like I say, you have real vehicles, you got real crashes, real people doing this stuff because in I believe in 1963 there was like only 100 stunt performers, and 80 of them worked on this movie. So I'm pretty sure the other 20 felt some type of way that they didn't get to work on this. But just think about it, there was only 100, only 100 at that time, and 80 of them were used in this film, and everything. That's kind of crazy. Like, I don't think a studio would even attempt to do that to this day. Like, would you do you think a studio would even would try something like this day and age? Like, no, because I mean CGI essentially has kind of taken that over. Practical effects and practical stunt, unless you're somebody like Tom Cruise, or something like that, you don't really see a lot of ambitious people like that anymore. That will say, okay, I will do this stunt, or let's do this as real as possible, and everything. So it's kind of, I mean, I understand some of the safety stuff. I understand that, but also at the same time, you want it to look as real as possible. And you can always tell when something is CGI. You really can. I don't care how good it gets. You can always tell when it's not real. And that's one of the great things about this movie, and I will continuously say this, that's one of the great things about this movie, and the fact that it is practical. And I think that's one of the reasons why I enjoy it the way I do, because it is real. Like, it's real people really doing this stunt work. And in a lot of cases, it is really the actors doing, the physical stuff as well. Um Now, okay, so one thing about the movie too is how the pacing of the movie changed, and how the pacing of comedy over the years has changed. When you look at older films, as far as they kind of tell a very complete story, and then it works if there's a good flow to it. Um, but in recent years, I think a lot of comedy, it starts out good and then it kind of falls off. It's like there's always something that just kind of like takes the what made what might have made something funny. It stops being funny like halfway through for whatever reason. And I think that's another reason why I can't really enjoy comedy the way I used to, because you don't really get a lot of really great comedy anymore to sustain for at least an hour and a half, 2 hours anymore. Whereas this movie, 3 hours, 30 minutes long, but there's always something to continuously make you laugh. There's always something continuously to keep you engaged with what's going on. Um, well, and like I say, the older movies play differently, like a Caddyshack, like Coming to America, like Harlem Nights, like even though it's, well, yeah, it's a buddy comedy, Midnight Run. You constantly finding something to enjoy with movies like that. Life, uh, hell, even the Oceans series, because that's an ensemble as well, and everything. You always constantly find yourself self staying engaged with stuff like that. Whereas newer comedies, it gets very hard. And that's just me. I mean, there's probably some of you that are listening and thinking like, oh no, I love modern comedy. I love, blah blah, and that's cool. I mean, everybody has their different opinions when it comes to that stuff. I just know for me, and how going back and looking at older comedies especially, and then looking at newer comedy, it's not really the same. Car Wash is another one. I'm talking about the not the Wash with Dr. Dre and Snoop. I'm talking about Car Wash, the one that features that features Richard Pryor and George Carlin from the 70s. That Car Wash. That's another ensemble, not comedy legends, but are legends in general. I think the only legends a part of that cast outside of Richard Pryor and George Carlin would be Bill Duke and Antonio Vargas, really. And everything. And probably the older guy who plays the manager. I could always forget his name also. Um, but you just don't get the same excitement or the same joy out of comedies today. Um, Perfect example, I would say I watched the new Anaconda, the one with Ryan, with not Brian, Paul Rudd and Jack Black, Steve Zahn, Thrandy Newton, and all of them, right? And it's funny. I enjoy it. For the most part, it made me laugh. I did feel like there was actually a message in the movie, which was ironic. It's always great when a movie can do that, like have a little message in it. Like I said, I enjoyed it a lot. Same thing with the newer Jumanji movies that also feature Jack Black, but also Kevin Hart, Dwayne Johnson. You know, movies. I mean, I enjoy them and find them funny. Granted, when they first said that Jumanji was going to be a thing, again, I thought like, okay, we're going to have The Rock basically taking on the Alan Parrish character that Robin Williams did, but they didn't. They flipped it. And at first, I was like, okay, that's different, but it still worked, essentially. And I believe they're making another one, and everything, stuff like that. It works, but then there's other comedies that is just like it don't work, um, and everything like that. So, like I say, nowadays is very hit or miss. I'm not saying that everything from back in the day was a hit, but there's a reason why you have a lot of classic comedies opposed to now where stuff isn't so classic or even an instant hit, or whatever. It just kind of comes and goes in a lot of cases. Um, but also too, I mean, the physical comedy stuff I think helps a lot because that was one thing about it. When you look back at a lot of the older stuff, the actors and actresses themselves had no problem doing like the physical comedy stuff themselves, or as far as how the jokes are done and how the joke is supposed to land, they didn't have a problem doing it. It's like nowadays it's kind of hard. It's like certain cases, oh, I'm not comfortable doing this or I'm not comfortable doing that. So then it kind of comes across in the scene where it's not as good as it probably should have been. Um, and also too, I would say this: is it possible that modern audiences are less patient with old school comedy? Like a lot of times a joke doesn't always have to land in the first second. Like the joke, going back to this movie for a second. So the scene when everyone is standing around talking about like how they figure up their share of this money, and Ethel Merman character keeps butting in, so everyone starts referring to her as the old bag. That is hilarious because she's the butt of the joke, and everyone is being very serious with how they're talking. But it's funny because all of it is being directed towards her. I don't really think a scene like that can fly today for the simple fact of I don't know if anyone can just stand around and like everyone's standing around being serious, but it's still being funny at the same time. It is kind of rare to see that in modern comedy anymore. Or, I mean, pretty much every line that Rodney Dangerfield says in Caddyshack feels like, okay, he's literally making all this up because there's no way he's talking like that. Like, there's no way that those lines was written for him, in a lot of cases. So I don't think a lot of time the again modern audiences has the patience for the comedy to land the way it used to land, basically. I mean, I could be wrong, so that's why I'm asking you guys that you can let me know how you guys might feel about that. Um, and it's interesting too about this movie that the villain of the movie is actually Greed. Greed is the true villain of this movie. because these all seem to be well-to-do people, except for maybe one character who was a no good right from the get-go. But everyone else seemed to be well-to-do people. And it's just the sheer greed is what kind of drove these people mad in a way and got them to go on this crazy quest and made them want to do any and everything for money, for the love of money, like the Isley brothers say, for the love of money. It'll make you take from your brother, right? um and it just shows like how money can change people. um Competition, how it destroyed the cooperation, because they started out trying to cooperate and trying to say, hey, okay, this is how we're gonna do this. But it's like as they continue to talk and everything, it's like they realize, like, no, I want it all for myself, my precious. Basically, that's how it made them. um and every single character, including Spencer Tracy's character, makes things worse, um essentially, uh and everything. And it's like, yeah, it's just as the movie progresses along, everyone gets greedier and greedier, and then they bring in other characters to the greed and gets them all hyped up and so blinded by the money. So, like, would any of us act differently if we were in this situation? Like, put yourself in the situation that these people are in this movie. Would you Do you think that you would act any differently, or would you stay, to who your core nature? Me, I'm not so sure. If like, depending on how much money we're talking about, I'm not so sure that I wouldn't be running around like Milton Berle, or running around like Sid Caesar, trying to get to this money. I don't think I'd be like Jonathan Winters, because I don't think I'd be manhandling too. But then again, like I say, the greed of money, yeah, you end up manhandling a couple of people to get the hell out of my way because I'm trying to get where I'm going, type of thing. And then as the movie progresses along, you see where uh Captain Culpepper, played by Spencer Tracy, like, he starts to get that itch, like, I have opportunity to get this money too, type of thing. So it just makes you wonder, like, put yourself in these people's situation. Like, do you think that you could stay cool, calm, and collected, or would you turn into a mad lunatic just like these people? And everything. And I mean, I mentioned earlier like how this movie influenced a lot of movies coming after, because like I say, I believe this is the first like road movie, and then after that you get these movies that takes place heavily on the road, as far as comedies go, and everything. And then, because like I said, I mentioned Rat Race a little bit, which is, I mean, Rat Race is essentially a rework, reimagined version of It's a Mad, Mad, Mad World. It really is. But then you have movies like the Cannonball Run movies, and different movies that I mentioned already. Um, and things like that. The ensemble, chase movies and everything. Everyone's running around and everyone's on the road, just trying to get to this place. You see the influence, the impact that It's a Mad, Mad, Mad World had on the industry as a whole and a genre in a whole, which shows you just like how iconic and legendary the movie actually is. Uh, and I keep saying that, like, would I like to see a version of the movie made today that if someone took a chance and said, I want to make it in the same vein as the original film, and you know let it let it do what it do, basically, and let's see if we can get some great comedians together to do this. Because I think one of the problems with Rat Race essentially was, yeah, you got a lot of great people together, but it didn't it didn't feel like they were all together. It felt like, at least with this movie, everyone was together, you know with a common goal as far as making the best movie possible, um and everything. So let's talk about what holds up and what feels dated with this movie. So the things I feel like is the reason why this movie still holds up is the cast, because like as I mentioned, a lot of great comedians from a bygone era are here. The stunt work, which I've talked about already. Um, it felt very ambitious. Thinking about this in 1963, you going to see this movie and you seeing some of the crazy stuff that they're doing. In this movie, it's like, what the hell is this? Like, what are they doing? Oh my God, they should be dead. How are they still alive? How are they doing this? Type of thing. So it was very ambitious at that time. And then the energy. Everyone has that, that fun energy. It has a fun energy about it. Where it makes you enjoy what you're watching. I feel like that's what holds up. Now, a few of the things that might feel dated. I mean, of course, the runtime. Does the movie really need to be 3 hours and 30 minutes long? No, not really. And I believe when it was actually originally filmed, there was an intermission. So that just tells you how long the freaking movie was, right? We reaching Gone with the Wind territory at that point. When you're talking about how long this freaking movie is, right? Some of the comedy styles I don't think, yeah, so some of the comedy styles I don't think still holds up. Because I mean, some of it is slapstick, some of it is kind of dry or whatever, so I don't think too many people of today would enjoy it from that aspect. And then the pacing, like I said, there's a quite a bit that could have been cut out of the movie to kind of shave down the runtime. But then a lot of the stars would lose um their moments to shine, like I talked about earlier and everything. So I think that kind of hurts it to a degree, because once you start getting towards the end, it's like, okay, it really could have ended the movie at least 3 times before it actually ends. But it's like, well, we have to kind of continue this on to keep it going a little bit more. So yeah, then it gets to a point of like, okay, it's not over yet. Okay, it's not over yet. All right, damn, it's still not over. So I can see people getting to that point, for the most part and everything. But I do feel like what holds up outweighs, what doesn't, and I think that's what continuously makes this movie entertaining to watch, essentially. So this is the portion of the show where I like to ask you guys, the listeners, some questions. Granted, I've asked a few questions throughout, but this portion of the show is where I like to ask the major questions. So, first question I want to ask to you guys is this: could this movie be successfully remade today? Now, my opinion, I think if the right people were involved, then yes. But if just some random studio says, "Hey, we have this a mad, mad, mad world. Let's remake it. Let's get some really popular people together. Let's get some streamers. Let's get some influencers together and everything. Let's make that movie." Right? I don't think it would be successful. So I think it'll have to be the right people involved, and not just someone who says, "Hey, let's do it for the sake of doing it," and everything. Uh, and then two, and second question: if it was to be remade, who could be in the cast? Because I mean, will we go with comedy legends? Will we go with current day stars? Like, who would be in the movie? And everything. Uh, and then, what's your favorite classic comedy? Me, my favorite classic, even though this is one of my favorites, but this isn't one that I watch all the time. Ironically, even though I consider it one of my top 10 greatest movies ever made, but I view this movie a little differently. That's why it's in that particular category. But as far as my favorite classic comedy, it would be Caddyshack. That is my favorite classic comedy movie. Um, and everything. Just something about that movie that I just enjoy. I think the biggest reason of what I enjoy about it is um, Rodney Dangerfield character, just him. Just running around doing the crap that he's doing. That would be my favorite. A few other favorites I have would actually be Coming to America. That's a classic comedy to me, and everything. But yeah, those are pretty my classes. But I would love to know what you guys classes are. And for all three questions that I asked, you can contact me via email at jmovietalk@gmail.com, You can actually comment on this episode, whether you listen to it on Spotify or if you're listening to me on YouTube. You can comment down below on YouTube. Let me know what's your favorite classic comedy, who could be in the cast, and would this movie be successfully remade if it was to be remade today, and everything. So to kind of wrap things up for this episode, um, this movie is still very important because there are movies today that still borrow and are influenced heavily from this movie. So it's still a very important movie. Um, it's still a very interesting and unique movie that Hollywood was able to pull off an achievement, to not only get all of these legends together and have certain bygone legends appear in this movie, whether it's for a split second or for a few minutes, or whatever. And then also too, I feel like it deserves more attention from younger fans. Me, I am a younger fan when it comes to this movie. This movie was made what 23 years before I was born, pretty much. Am I getting that right? Sometimes math is hard. Yeah, 23 years before I was born. So, yeah, right. That's kind of insane. But I so like I say, I am a younger fan when it comes to this movie, and I enjoy it for what it is. I enjoy the entertainment. I enjoy it for its achievement and its influence on not just a genre but on the industry as a whole, and everything. So yeah, that is my take on It's a Mad, Mad, Mad World. Hopefully, you guys have enjoyed me talking about the movie. No, I was not going to sit here and talk about scene by scene because that would turn this podcast into a 3 hour tour, basically, and everything. But if you want to check out the movie, I highly recommend you checking it out. If you haven't checked it out by the time you listen to this episode, definitely go back and check it out because like I say, it is very easy to find on streaming services like that. So before I actually get out of here, next episode I'm going to go away from the comedy, but it does feature a comedic, well, a more known comedic actor who has dabbled in more serious stuff, and I'm talking about the original The Taking of Pelham 123, which stars Walter Matthau, Robert Shaw, uh, in this movie. So I'm going to be leaving the comedy chaos, and then I'm taking it to the New York trains underground tension that the movie has, and it is one of the coolest movies probably ever made. That soundtrack, that theme soundtrack, I think is one of the dopest, and this might be one of Walter Matthau's best movies and one of his best performances in a movie. So I'm gonna have fun talking about that because it's actually a first time watch for me. I have never actually watched the original Taking a Pelham 123. I've only seen like scenes from it, but I've never watched it from beginning to end all the way through. So I am very excited to watch this movie and actually talk about it and everything like that. So thank you all for listening to this episode. Of course, you can find me on the social medias. Of course, you can find me on Threads. You can find me on Facebook also. If you're on Facebook, where I just post movie stuff and things like that, and get into somewhat debates with people about their sheer nonsense, and everything. But I'm on Facebook. I'm on Threads, the J Giles, on Instagram at JMT Podcast. You can find all of the Movie Talk podcasts a part of the TV Zone Podcast Network, wherever you listen to your podcasts at. And also, too, if you want to check me out on YouTube, you can find me on YouTube, just J Movie Talk over on YouTube. Appreciate the support that I'm getting over there as well and everything like that. So until next time, where I will be doing episode 372, talking about the Taking of Pelham 123, I will catch you guys then. Later. Peace.